I recently faced something no man should ever need to voice aloud. My property became the target of a motorcycle gang, and the cause was an HOA conflict. They believed intimidation tactics would force me away from my land. The amusing part is that the only person they encountered was someone trained to finish conflicts, not initiate them. Allow me to begin from the start. Before we continue, please share where you're tuning in from today. The initial warning sign wasn't the letter. It was the motion sensor light above my barn entrance that activated at 3:14 a.m. and remained illuminated. Not a brief flash, not caused by a feline or raccoon, just complete floodlighting triggered by something or someone. I remained calm, didn't immediately get up, an ingrained response. Never react before you've observed everything. I monitored from my living room corner, screen glowing with cold coffee still sitting on the burner. The scene appeared normal, but I've invested sufficient time pursuing individuals who believed they were undetectable to recognize otherwise. Two silhouettes moved deliberately along my outer fence perimeter. They traveled as if they understood stealth but were unaware they'd already been spotted. One displayed a slight limp in the right leg, while the other swept with a red filtered flashlight, brief arcs, low beam intensity. This wasn't civilian behavior. It was reconnaissance technique, traditional textbook method, precisely what I used to execute. They didn't breach my property, didn't even contact the gate, but one approached the well cover directly, struck it twice, then departed. No explanation, no sequence, simply tap, tap like transmitting a signal. They withdrew without stealing anything but left something behind. The following morning, attached to the barn entrance was a talisman. Jet black carved bone, a skull with barbed wire etched through the jaw, and what appeared to be military hash marks along the side. This wasn't something purchased at a truck stop. It wasn't a joke, it was a territorial marker. Just beneath it, partially concealed in gravel, were boot impressions. Wider than typical, deep indentations. Definitely not local. I followed them back 60 yards before they disappeared into brush behind the hill. Karen appeared 4 hours later. Didn't telephone, didn't announce herself. Strolled halfway up my private driveway with her designer canine and her crocodile grin. She donned a pastel windbreaker like it was combat gear. Her poodle showed no curiosity, didn't bark, didn't even pause to relieve itself. Beautiful day, she commended, as if she wasn't standing a full mile beyond her own property boundaries. Still private property, I responded. I just wanted some fresh air, she said with false cheer. This is working land. She produced a programmed fake laugh. Some of us on the board have observed equipment violating the HOA's standards. You mean the hay baler that's occupied the same location for 8 years? I'm certain you comprehend that community aesthetics matter. Aesthetics, I said, gesturing toward a goat that had just defecated on a rock with remarkable accuracy. Her expression tightened. I would prefer this not become confrontational. You're already here with a leash on my gravel. It's not personal, Karen. Everything with you is personal. You attempted to find me for using a chainsaw at noon. She gazed past me toward the barn, hesitated a moment too long. Just remember, we're a community, and communities only function when everyone cooperates. She left that statement hanging, turned and walked back the way she arrived without once glancing at her dog. Inside the mailbox that afternoon was a violation notice, typed to a letterhead, standard template nonsense, except this one included a second page. The footer read, Notice 1 of 3 before legal enforcement action, and was signed, Karen Wedeker, President, Simmons Valley Homeowners Association, Acting Director of Security Enforcement. I studied that final line extensively because I didn't recall electing any of those positions. That evening I retrieved the container. Not just any container, Tichy container. It sat beneath a concealed panel in my workshop behind 3 rusted tool bins and a lock I hadn't touched in years. Inside, a folded satellite phone, an encrypted flash drive, a folder labeled Most Rock Echo, and a toolkit designed for things most people shouldn't access. I wasn't preparing to hunt. Not yet. But if they returned, I wasn't about to wait defenseless. Then the light triggered again, same one, barn entrance. Only this time it flickered once, then died. Power cut cleanly. 2 minutes later the backup feed buzzed. Someone was on the eastern trail, moving rapidly, then motionless. I grabbed the monitor, zoomed in. Same figure, same limp, but this time they weren't scanning, they were staring directly at the lens. Just standing there, not smiling, not masked, just observing. Then they turned and vanished into the trees. The next morning I discovered the sign flipped, the one nailed to my front post reading, Trespassers will be buried where they fall. It hadn't been removed. It had been reversed carefully, silently, as if whoever did it wanted me to notice it but not hear it. That's not intimidation. That's communication. That's a chess move. I spent the next 4 hours inspecting wires, replacing trail cam batteries, resetting thermal sweeps, and reactivating the high-frequency trip alarms I'd buried 4 winters ago during the poacher incidents. I didn't sleep, didn't rest long, didn't reach for anger. I planned, I mapped, I waited. Because what Karen didn't realize was that I've confronted enemies with actual firepower, and they didn't send poodles first. But what remained with me wasn't the letter or the charm or even the man with the limp staring at my lens. It was that tap on the well. Because I hadn't used that well in 7 years, and no one, not a soul, was supposed to know it was still connected to anything. But someone did, and they weren't just testing me. They were marking the location. They didn't arrive roaring like a threat, they glided in like routine. 6 of them, matte black motorcycles, clean as hospital equipment, engines purring like they were built to stalk, not chase. They rolled past my gate at exactly 10:13 a.m. single file, not slow, not fast, no music, no acknowledgements, just a precision cruise, by like they were scanning barcodes on my property. I stood on the porch and observed, didn't move, didn't blink. They never looked back, that was the first pass. They returned at sunset, same formation, same 6 motorcycles, but this time one separated, not aggressively, just enough to kiss the edge of my gravel. His front tire nudged it, held for 3 seconds, then rolled back and rejoined the pack. Didn't look at the house, didn't nod, just left his mark. The next morning I found my mailbox bent at a 30-degree angle, not crushed, not vandalized, bent just enough to whisper. We were here, we chose not to knock. The trail cameras were offline but not destroyed. One had the cord detached with surgical precision, another had its lens unscrewed and neatly placed upside down on the fence post. That's not destruction, that's messaging. That day I found the goat lying just beyond the east fence line. No blood, no drag marks, just a broken neck and a leather strap tied tight around her rear leg. The knot wasn't random, it was a field binding, fast and silent, the exact technique I used in Kandahar when livestock needed relocating without noise. You don't learn that knot on YouTube. Someone had studied me, or worse, worked with me. I packed a bag that night, didn't call the sheriff, didn't ask permission. I packed the way I used to, tight, silent, surgical. Thermal scope, burner phone, encrypted drive, suppressed Glock, 1 pair of boots, 2 full magazines, map of the valley, and a worn coin I'd only ever carried on operations. A reminder you don't run unless you're ready to chess. They led me where they wanted, out past county lines to a bar that doesn't list an address. No name, no lights, just buzzing neon and half-lit signage. I parked 2 lots over, neutral truck. At 9:48 p.m. the motorcycles arrived, same 6, same choreography. At 10:06 Karen stepped outside. She wore a hoodie stamped, Show Property Integrity Division. Custom made, looked proud of it. She laughed, clinked bottles, pointed across a map someone unrolled on a trash can. My valley, my land. She didn't look like someone terrified of a dangerous man on the edge. She looked like someone collecting a bonus. I went in through the back kitchen door. Long coat cap pulled low. The stench of grace, lither, and bad intent hit before I even reached the bar. I sat in a booth, didn't speak, didn't order, watched, listened. He's stubborn, one guy said. So push again, said another. Karen's nervous. Karen doesn't matter, someone growled. The buyer wants him sweating, not bleeding yet. I didn't flinch, but I felt the shift. There it was, Karen wasn't running the show. She was the middle manager, and someone above her had just added me to their spreadsheet. One of the bikers entered, Jake McBride. Ex-military, ex-human being as far as I'm concerned. I hadn't seen him in a decade, but the scar across his knuckles was the same as the last time I had to carry him out of a failed operation with a bullet in his shoulder. He didn't see me, but another one did. Guy at the bar turned, scanned the room once, paused a beat too long on my corner. I left before that scan became a signal. My barn was open when I got home, not broken into, just ajar. Inside, a crow hung upside down from the rafters. Beneath a spent 7.62 Mama casing, clean, deliberate, and 3 words carved into the stall door, still watching, soldier. Karen called the next morning. Callahan, she said cheerfully. We noticed you didn't submit your Q2 property upkeep form. You think I'm playing forms with you right now? I think you're agitated, maybe even unstable. You're arming contractors and trespassing. That's quite an accusation. I saw you at the bar with them. I support local businesses. She said flatly, it's important to build bridges. You're burning yours. If you're feeling unsafe, Mr. Callahan, she said sweetly, perhaps you're not a good fit for this neighborhood. Say that again. Or perhaps you need a wellness check. I'd be happy to recommend a licensed behavioral consultant. That wasn't concern, that was a threat dressed in silk. I hung up before she could weaponize another word. Later that week I stopped for diesel 2 towns over. Guy behind the counter wearing a shell polo named tag Red Mike. But the scar on his hand, same one I'd seen from the bar. He rang me up like nothing was wrong, like we hadn't just swapped territories in a quiet war. I reinforced the garage that night, set backup feeds, buried trip alarms, and when I checked the windows I saw it. A smudge on the inside pane, just one, left index finger angled at a slant I hadn't seen in years. I took the print, ran it, and when the result pinned, I just stood there staring at the name. I didn't say a word, didn't curse, didn't punch a wall, because the man who left that print didn't just serve with me. I trained him, trusted him, and now he was circling my land like it was his. I hadn't said Jake McBride's name in 7 years, didn't write it, didn't think it. Some people you just erase from your memory, not because they're gone, but because they left wrong. But his fingerprint on the inside of my garage window said everything. We met during a mission that didn't exist, somewhere south of Kandahar, north of Sanity. Jake was the kind of guy who laughed when bullets cracked too close. Once he dragged me out of a kill zone with a ruptured quad and a pack of enemy drones circling like vultures. We're not dead yet, he joked, teeth blood-stained, so let's not ruin the streak. That's what made it worse. He wasn't just dangerous, he was family. After the fingerprint match, I didn't sleep, didn't even sit. Instead, I started building a picture. Tapped an old network, pulled burner logs from the cell tower near Simmons Valley. One burner phone pinched 3 times from a motel 11 miles out of town. Old concrete slab, peeling paint, no website, no working ice machine. But the power log showed a thermal spike every 4 hours. Someone was there, someone staying cold. I drove out before dawn, neutral truck, plates from a junked rental I bought off a friend 3 states away. Parked in an alley behind a closed body shop, waited for hours. Nothing, then motion, a door opened, blackout curtains, no lights. Jake stepped out, didn't see me. Same walk, same posture, same dent in the back of his matte black helmet, where I'd once struck him with a rifle butt for talking trash mid-operation. He walked to the vending machine, fed in $1, grabbed water. I almost stepped out, almost, then he looked straight at me, didn't flinch, didn't react. Just took a sip, walked back inside. No acknowledgement, no signal, But we both knew he saw me and chose not to say a word. I didn't go and didn't confront. Instead, I left something in his saddlebag, a folded photo of me and him grinning like idiots in Baghdad, bloodied dusty. On the back, scrawled in Sharpie, "You owe me more than silence." Tucked inside the fold, a single 338 round. That night I got the message. My laptop lit up at 3:12 a.m., encrypted drop, audio file, no sender. I played it. Jake's voice flat cold, just like it was when he was on mission. "You always said we'd be ghosts when this ended, but you built a fence, Callahan. You stopped moving. Now you're a mark. Walk away from the HOA mess. This isn't your operation, and next time I won't just send eyes." He paused. "That bullet you left? Cute. But I'm not bluffing either." Then silence. I didn't even blink. I went to the barn, checked every hidden spot, and there it was. Taped to the underside of the hayloft platform, a hard drive labeled ECU past Thibault. I cracked it on a burner station offline. Inside was drone footage, surveillance of my land, heat maps, my movement trails, zooms on my home windows, and me on the porch drinking coffee. But the final file, a single image. It was me again, walking the fence line, except with crosshairs centered on my back. The next day Karen held a neighborhood resilience panel. Folded chairs, pitcher of lemonade, fake smiles. "We all feel stressed," she said, standing in front of a PowerPoint. "But stress makes us imagine threats where there are none." I stepped forward from the back of the room. "Funny you say that, because I've got 64 hours of drone footage proving someone sees me as the threat." Karen blinked too fast. "Mr. Callahan, this is a safe space." "I'm sure it is for you, with your little Blackwater cosplay running reconnaissance on my barn. You sound paranoid. And you sound cornered." I pulled the printed image from my jacket, held it up. "This was taken 3 nights ago from the air using military-grade optics. You know who uses tech like this, Karen?" She stayed quiet. "Jake McBride. He's not sloppy." She snapped, then froze. Silence. "I didn't say he made a mistake," I said. "I said he was here." "I misunderstood." "No, Karen, you remembered something you weren't supposed to." She smiled. "Too tight, too late?" "You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking like someone being hunted." She leaned in, fake sweet. "If you're truly feeling unsafe, the board would be happy to suggest relocation options." "If I'm going anywhere," I said, "it'll be through your firewall." I walked out, didn't slam the door, didn't need to. The entire room felt like a balloon stretched too tight, waiting for a pin. I went home and dug up something I swore I never would. An old logbook, the only paper copy I ever kept from Echo Unit. Inside were aliases, handler notes, and one critical trick, a 6 disavowed 2015. Alias Signal Ghost. Current activity unknown. Final ordered if seen neutralize. That was Jake, and he hadn't just resurfaced, he'd been reactivated. That drive wasn't just surveillance. It was a checklist, and I wasn't the only one on it. Karen wasn't managing an HOA, she was running a target list, and Jake, he was the trigger man. Now it was just a matter of who pulled first. They thought I was still playing defense, but I've played enough games in deserts, jungles, and villages with no names to know you don't win by reacting. You win by rewriting the battlefield. So that's exactly what I did. I stopped being the guy watching the perimeter and I became the trap. Started with maps. Simmons Valley OA's digital ecosystem wasn't built by professionals. It was a slapped-together Frankenstein of apps, vendor portals, and subscription security packages that some nephew probably got a referral bonus for recommending. But I knew where to look. Every system has a shadow, logs, trails, unsecured ports. I found the HOA's back-end gateway through their property management company, EverSafe. They used a third-party enforcement tool built for behavioral compliance monitoring. Real dystopian name, very Black Mirror. The portal login page still lived from 2020. Password Karen Wodika. When I laughed out, what I found was a digital kill book, 17 residents flagged as non-compliant, each with personal notes, camera footage, drone observations, schedule habits, asset values. It wasn't surveillance, it was targeting. Karen was logging lives like a hit list with HO letterhead. So I mapped their reconnaissance. I launched my own. Used one of the oldest tricks we used in Syria, the lure and log. I set out a riding mower just off my western property line, not running, just idling, battery rigged to cycle noise every 30 seconds. At 2:14 am the tripwire snapped. Thermal picked up 2 heat signatures. Male low crouch, 1 rifle slung, 1 with communications. They weren't there to steal, they were testing my reaction time, which meant it was time for my own test. 2 nights later I tagged their motorcycles. Tiny GPS beacons disguised as license plate screws. Same trick we used on enemy convoys when we wanted to follow, not fight. Then I followed the pings. All 6 beacons eventually converged on a single location, an abandoned equipment lot 14 miles southwest. That was their staging ground. Now here's where it got good. Karen submitted a form petition to have me relocated for community harmony. That's right, Retire Clause Soundpoint 4C, Non-Participatory Hostility Clause, seconded by a John H. Myers alias, but the signature matched Jake McBride's field report handwriting from our Panama reconnaissance mission in 2011. Nice try, so I showed up, not to the lot, to the AUA General Assembly. Karen's monthly power party, folding chairs, coffee station, big laminated schedule that said things like trash bin uniformity and pet bark disable norms. I walked in mid-meeting. Karen froze mid-sentence. "Mr. Callahan, you're not on the speaker list." "I'm not here to speak," I said. "I'm here to testify." The room got quiet. I tossed a folder onto the center table, thick stack, printed contracts, vendor payments, invoices to Simmons Valley Compliance Patrol, and photos. McBride on her porch, her signature on a drone reconnaissance budget. Time-coded footage of Karen handing a phone to a biker wearing tactical gloves. "This is fake," she said too quickly. "Metadata says otherwise," I replied. "Created on your Echo-issued laptop." She looked around the room. "No backup, and one could have hacked." "Karen, the document folder was called K-Private. Hey, archives, do not touch. You uploaded it from your guest Wi-Fi. That network still named Karen likes cats. A few people snorted, her face cracked. You're bluffing. You know who I am, I said. You're a paranoid loner with a gun fetish. Wrong. You're a threat. I paused. I'm the guy who trained the guy you hired to scare me. Silence. She stood, started to dial her phone. I walked over and slowly placed my hand on the table. Call them, let's see how it plays out. She hesitated, the phone screen still glowing, finger hovering. You think you're untouchable. I think you just realize you're not the one pulling the strings anymore. And then the doors opened. My brother walked in, Sheriff Callahan, full uniform, badge, no smile. Behind him, 2 deputies, county cybercrime officer and a warrant. Karen's voice cracked. You can't be serious, he's your brother. That's why I didn't want to be the one to serve it, he said flatly. You're framing me. No, Karen, you did that all by yourself. He turned to the board. This OA is under investigation for conspiracy, fraud, and misuse of law enforcement style contracting. If anyone else here has been threatened, you're going to want to speak now. Half the room stood up. Karen sat down hard. They escorted her out quietly, but before she left, she looked at me, face pale, eyes burning. You think this is over? She hissed. Karen, I said, this hasn't even started. But the next day, that's when I knew we weren't done. I found it in my mailbox, plain white envelope, no return address. Inside, a single photo, my house shot from a drone, infrared overlay, timestamp 3:44 a.m. the night before the ambush, and a sticky note attached. Hey, Karen was the welcome mat. Now comes the front door. Karen was just the decoy. Now I'd pulled back the curtain, and there was someone else watching, someone with more money, more reach, and fewer rules. And I just gave them a reason to take me seriously. There's a kind of quiet that only happens when you've taken out the loudest threat, and it's never the good kind. Karen was in custody, the board was folding in on itself, the whole neighborhood was acting like I'd single-handedly canceled Armageddon, but inside, nothing felt finished. Because if Karen was the tip of the spear, someone else was still holding the shaft. The threats didn't stop. Mailboxes still rattled at 200 a.m. My trail cam still triggered every other night. A drone passed over the west field, high, fast, silent. Someone out there had more reach, more money, and less patience. So I stopped playing defense. I opened the war chest. There's an unspoken rule in Delta. If the mission profile changes, you change with it. No emotion, no delay, just recalibrate. So I went back to the logs from the Huawei server. Karen had left a breadcrumb trail. Not intentionally, but her arrogance was as loud as her clipboard. The folder marked Circle Wux Ops was encrypted, but not well. Inside, a reference to Beta Site 3. That's when everything locked into place. Beta Site 3 was supposed to be a failed domestic test run for covert community stabilization. A think tank experiment cooked up by DHS post-2011, a little urban behavioral lab disguised as an HOA initiative, publicly shut down in 2015 but on paper. Sure, things always get shut down on paper. But this wasn't paper, this was still active. Karen wasn't a tyrant with a complex. She was a local manager for something far bigger. I pulled my encrypted backup drive and reached out to the only person who could validate what I was seeing, Lita. She answered with her usual charm. If this is about another dead goat or deleted email trail, I swear to God, it's bigger. I need you to trace federal contractor shells linked to Circle 1 through OA portals. She was quiet for 3 seconds. Jesus, you're really in it now? Was I ever out of it? An hour later, she had it. They're laundering intel through the management platforms. Beta Site 3 is active. Langley fingerprints civilian contractors disguised as compliance reps and the shooters. One name pops up again. Reyes. Ring a bell. It did too loud. Reyes was my spotter. Best in class, could see wind like it was printed in the air. Last I heard, he vanished off grid after a blown mission in Honduras. Now he was listed as R. Dale on a Simmons Valley invoice for Specialized Community Oversight Response. I tracked the IP tied to his recent activity, led to a farmstead in Hollow Creek, abandoned from the outside. Inside, thermal showed 3 warm bodies, 1 pacing, 1 seated, 1 prone. Training. Stage in, I left him a gift, shell with a scratched message, you owe me an answer. He called the next night. Voice was dry gravel. I told them you wouldn't stay buried. You knew it was me the whole time. You didn't hide your prints. You're working for them. I'm surviving. That's what we called it when we had no choice. We still don't. A pause. They sent Jake, but he wasn't enough. You rattled Karen so hard she started improvising. That's why I stepped in. So what now? Now they pay me to clean up the mess. I didn't answer because I already knew what I needed. Location, a hierarchy, a crack in the chain. Reeves gave me one. They call it the circle. You were always outside of it, but now you're in the middle, and they're closing in. I spent the next 2 days fortifying the ranch, laid silent perimeter mics, tethered IR tripwires to flare triggers, rigged my garage door with a magnetic EMP lock. Then I waited. At 30:30 a.m. motion alarm triggered on the north fence. One biker, not Jake Younger, less steady, walking the line. I tracked him through 5 cameras. When he reached the side of the barn, the trap sprung. Tripwire tension bar caught his leg and snapped him sideways into the dirt. He didn't move, but his mic was hot. Subject perimeter compromised, he whispered. No visual on asset. I stepped out from behind the stall. That's because the asset has visual on you. He reached for his belt. I fired 1 round next to his hand. Next one doesn't miss. His eyes widened. You're not supposed to be, what, awake, armed, or alive? I cuffed him, dragged him to the tool shed, left him tied there for the sheriff. Message sent. Next day, Karen tried again, out on bail, back in her power suit, still pretending she ran the show. She showed up at my front gate, clipboard in hand, lawyer in tow. Mr. Callahan, this is a courtesy visit to remind you you're trespassing. You've been deemed a hostile actor. You've been deemed irrelevant. You may have stopped my people, But you haven't stopped the program. Did you rehearse that in front of a mirror? You think you're funny. I think I'm free. Her lawyer looked uncomfortable. Karen leaned in. This doesn't end with me. You made the circle look weak. They'll fix that. Good. I said, let them try. Later that night I got the envelope. Unmarked, clean paper, black ink. Inside a personal check, 7 figures, no signature. Just a post-it note, everyone has a price. I burned it. The next morning Ray showed up in person. No gear, no weapon, just him. He stood at the edge of my fence like he was waiting for a shot. What now? I asked. Why? You made too much noise. Your brother's probe got DH's attention. Langley's scrubbing the beta. So it's over. He shook his head. They're just changing names. He looked down. I'm out. If you let me walk. You owe me answers. I gave you more than they would have allowed. You think that clears your tab? He didn't respond. He just turned and walked, and I let him. But I didn't stop preparing because I knew something Rise didn't say. Something he was too loyal or too scared to admit. There was one final file buried on Karen's high server. Encrypted, hidden behind a dummy lease document. When I cracked it, no names, no threats, just a heading: reassignment pellet zone in Midwest beta. And coordinates. Not for Simmons Valley, somewhere else. Which meant this wasn't the end. It was just the end of my chapter, and someone else's war was about to begin. The first night after the takedown was the kind of silence you don't hear. You feel it. Thick, heavy, like the valley itself was holding its breath. No engines, no flashlights sweeping through trees, no Karen. Just the steady wind dragging across dry grass like it was erasing what had been written. The sheriff's office took the files, all of them. Boxes and drives and screenshots and maps. Every HOA budget log, drone invoice, and community wellness report was now tagged as evidence in a federal investigation. The irony, for all their obsession with surveillance, the circle hadn't seen this coming. Or maybe they had and didn't care, because by the time the feds showed up, Karen was gone. No public statement, no perp walk, just vanished like she was never real. Even her name got wiped from the OA website. The board posted a generic message: due to unforeseen transitions, Simmons Valley HA will be restructuring operations. You don't restructure a war crime. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt displaced, like I'd built this home on solid ground only to find it had been floating over a sinkhole the whole time. I walked the entire ranch the next morning, sun coming up slow, boots pressing into soil still damp from the storm, cattle quiet. At the edge of the northern fence I found it, one last surveillance node tucked inside a fake fence post cap, flashing red, still alive. I unscrewed the cap and held the device in my hand, compact, clean, marked with a circle logo the size of a dime. I crushed it between 2 rocks and tossed it into the well. No more watchers. Then I went to the barn and pulled every single bug camera and signal trap I'd let lev during the operation. Dropped them all into a steel drum, lit the fuse, stood there until the plastic melted and metal curled. A few hours later, Lita called. Congratulations, your case file just closed. You sure? Your brother's team triggered a federal flag when they uploaded the OA's metadata. Langley denied knowledge, DHS played dumb, but someone above them shut it down fast, so they're scrubbing everywhere but one place. Midwest, a new Phase 3 site. Not officially connected, but the fingerprints are there. Send me what you got. Already did. Pause. You're not done, are you? They wanted me to quit, and they should have offered more than money. He didn't call first. My brother just showed up, truck pulling up the gravel with the weight of old memories. He brought burgers and a 6-pack. We sat on the porch watching the hills fade into that golden afternoon haze that only hits right before dusk. You planning on staying? He asked. For now. You going to rebuild? Maybe. Or, I paused, or I take what I know and burn the rest of this thing to the ground. He handed me a beer. You always did like to overachieve. Later that night I found a package at my gate, steel case, unmarked, padlocked. Inside, a burner phone, a USB drive, a folded patch, Delta Force but altered. The usual eagle replaced with a hollow black circle. Stitched underneath, Phase 3 initiated. Awaiting asset confirmation. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the garage surrounded by gear I hadn't touched in years. Maps, field guides, communications equipment, and a set of dog tags I'd buried under a beam 10 years ago. I dug them out, wiped the dirt off, laid them on the workbench beside the burner phone. It lit up at exactly 0400. Block number 1, text, confirm receipt. Awaiting position. I didn't respond, not right away. Instead I walked outside, stood under the stars, breathed. Then I said it out loud to no one, to the night. You really think I'm the kind of man who turns down a second war? Then I walked back inside and sat there until morning. Because here's the thing,